Welcome to the Bad Dad Horror Podcast with your hosts, John Couture and Sierra Couture. We all have daddy issues. Ours just comes with an extra helping of blood and gore.
Welcome back to the Bad Dad Horror Podcast. I'm your host, John Couture.
And I'm your co-host, Sierra Couture.
Well, Sierra, we're back for, I don't know, what is this, episode 6, 7?
I think 7.
Starting to lose count. I do believe you're right. It is episode 7. For those of you that are playing along at home, a lot of things have happened since the last time we recorded. We've actually gone live with the podcast. The beauty of having all these episodes banked is we were able to release a whole bunch of episodes at one time and still do some new content. Unfortunately, we did take a vacation. Halloween kind of rolled in there, and then Sierra was sick for a little bit, so weren't able to record. And so we're a few episodes behind recording, but don't you fret. We are still watching and going over movies, and we're getting them all recorded and released on a timely schedule. How you feeling, Sierra? You ready to get into it?
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. Well, today we are... Oh, first of all, I should say, let's do a little recap so we know exactly what this podcast is all about. If you're tuning in for the first time, the Bad Dad Horror Podcast answers the question, am I a bad dad? And while some of you may jump to the conclusion and say, absolutely yes, that's not maybe necessarily the case. My daughter, who's a tween, started watching Stranger Things and said, hey, I really like this thing called horror, and I want to watch some more horror films and projects. And I said, well, that's great. Unfortunately, we don't have video stores that can help you pick and choose and go on the right path. So being a horror aficionado who probably saw his fair share of films too early in life, I decided to take it upon my wing to show these films to her. So join us as we go along this little journey, as it were, into the dark side of film and horror, and we try to each week watch a couple movies, talk about them, and see if maybe I am a bad dad.
It's the kind of house they don't build anymore. A relic of a time when the world wasn't in such a hurry, when there was still time for a little charm and elegance. It has stood empty for a long while. And at the price, it is a bargain. For a growing young family, it is almost too good to be true.
What do you think?
I love it.
James Brolin, Margot Kidder, Rod Steiger, in the Amityville Horror, 28 days after the Lutz family moved into their dream house. They were running for their lives. What happened to them is an experience in terror you will never forget, and you will believe in the Amityville Horror. From the best-selling book that made millions believe in the unbelievable, the Amityville Horror.
All right, jumping right in this week, we have 2 new films, and you'll see a theme approach pretty quickly. The first film is The Amityville Horror. It's a 1979 film directed by Stuart Rosenberg. It stars James Brolin and Margot Kidder. And probably the best thing I can say about this is it's a film based on a family who buys a house in Long Island. And like many things in life, when things are too good to be true, they usually are. The house is really cheap, been on the market for a while. And that's because the house has a backstory, has a little bit of a past. And as the events in the film take place, we see that comes back to bite them. Sierra, what did you feel? How did you feel about the Amityville Horror?
Meh.
Meh? That's your one-word response? Meh?
Yeah, I mean, well, it was good, but it didn't. I don't know.
You don't know. What did you care about it?
I liked how the dog pulled the dude out of going to hell. Then he
the
pulled
other
him,
dimension, as it were, from the basement. Yeah.
He pulled him out of the little hole thingy-majig.
Right.
I
Well,
like that part.
Yeah, and like most movies, the dog is definitely the hero for sure. And I know you're very happy whenever the dog survives. And
Yes.
and I know the greatest moments of trepidation for you in this film watching it was the fate of the dog for sure. What did you think about the idea of the storyline about the house being cursed, being that
Oh yeah, I really like that part. I like the part where the house bled. That was pretty cool.
Yep. And the idea. So, do you think the idea of a place being haunted, like a cemetery or an ancient Indian burial ground, not to tip our hat on perhaps the second film we watched this week, but what do you think of the idea of places being naturally cursed, where just no matter what you do, there's just nothing you can do. It's just a naturally evil place.
Well, I really like that part of it, but it was more like the house in Amityville Horror. It was kind of like that one was more alive, because it kind
Sure.
of, it had like the eyes that like,
Yes.
it had eyes, and then it bled like a human being bleeds. And then I also want to say something else.
Okay, go ahead.
At the end, this is not
Spoiler
related.
alert.
This is not related to the question you said.
Sure, but go ahead.
But at the end, the eyes like collapsed, like the eyes like broke through, like
Sure.
the glass broke. But then at the very, very end, like when they're escaping, it shows the final shot of the house,
Sure.
and the eyes are back. The
Right.
windows are literally rebuilt.
So maybe the windows didn't actually break in reality. Maybe it was just a figurative way of showing that the evil has broken because the house have been destroyed, metaphorically. I don't know, to be honest. But one thing we should point out before we go much further in our discussion of the Amityville Horror is that this is supposedly based upon a true story. There is a real house in Long Island, and it does have those windows in the dormers that look like eyes. It's a very famous house, and for all the wrong reasons. A family lives there now and say they have not had any sort of supernatural or any sort of evil things happen while they've lived in the house. So that's an interesting thing, because this is the first time we've really talked about a true story. Now, yes, Texas Chainsaw Massacre is supposedly based on a true story, but Ed Gein's MO is very different than the murderers in Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So it's kind of like a accumulation of a couple different stories. So this is really based on a true story. So, as filmmakers and director Stuart Rosenberg obviously has to, use a little bit, because it's based on a true story, but there's obviously fictionalization. I don't think the real house bled. But, he used that aspect to show, to fictionalize events to make it more, spooky and scary.
I also didn't think it has a hole in it that goes down.
It may not. It may. You never know. Some of those old houses in Long Island, you just never know what you're going to find in those houses.
Yeah, they might have a hole in the basement, but I don't think it goes all the way down to hell.
You don't think it goes all the way down to hell? Well, maybe it just goes to China. Maybe bypasses hell and goes right down to China. What do you think? Maybe? No? Okay. What did you think of the supernatural aspect? Because we've watched a little bit about Amityville Horror beyond this movie. We talked about we saw some stories about the real murder, and the film takes place and the book takes place. The Lutz family, who only lived in the house for 28 days before finally being overcome by the evil of the house, decided to move out. In which some people thought that maybe they were making it up. Do you think they were making it up, or do you believe them? Do you believe that the house could, basically have these bad omens upon it?
I mean, it probably has it's probably got like a creepy feeling to it, because,
Sure.
I mean, if you know what happened there, we forgot to tell them what happened there.
Yeah,
didn't
definitely. And we should say that what happened was, before the Lutz family, the reason why it was on the market for so long and it really reduced prices, the family before them that lived there, one of the sons allegedly butchered his entire family, the parents and his siblings and 4 or 5 kids.
Some of his siblings are like really, really small, like
Yeah,
really, really
definitely. So, so he claimed that he went crazy. He was hearing voices and, things like that caused him to lead this murder. And again, it's all based on his interpretation. Somebody who's obviously mentally touched, has some issues going on. And we have to wonder if the narrator of this case or the person telling the story is being truthful or not completely, because we just don't know. I mean, is this person, telling the story to try to save his life? Like, oh yes, the devil made me do it, or the demon made me do it, or the house is haunted, it's evil. Or did he just flip out one day, lose his mind, needed drugs, who knows, and just killed his family? But yeah, so that is the aspect upon which they bought that house. So yeah, it where does that go for you?
The aspect of I feel like it definitely has maybe it doesn't have like a bad omen, but like when you get there, it certainly feels like it.
Sure.
Because you know what happened in the past. It just feels like a place that bad stuff would go down since it had already had bad stuff go down. Like, if like something really, really bad happens at one of your favorite places to go, would you want to go there again if it was like really, really, really bad?
I don't know. I mean, if you love going to Disney World, right? Well, what happens if tomorrow you read that Mickey Mouse went crazy and shot up 20 people in Disney World? They're all dead. Now, would that put a damper on your next trip to Disney World, or would you be less inclined?
Yes, that would put a damper because I would be scared that the new Mickey Mouse was going to go crazy and shoot up children again.
Yeah, Mickey Mouse doesn't really strike me as the shoot up the park kind of character. That's probably more Goofy. I think Goofy would be more of the mass murderer, don't you think?
Yeah, that's why I was laughing, because you used Mickey Mouse as an example.
Maybe Mickey Mouse and Minnie Mouse, maybe they go on a little Bonnie and Clyde crime spree through the parks. Who knows? I don't know. Kind of crazy. Or on a similar track to the movie, let's try to get it back on tracks here. We live in this house. We weren't the first people to live in this house. There's been multiple families that lived in this house before we did. Would it make it scary for you if you knew that the first people that lived in this house were murdered in this house?
Were they?
I don't know. Would it make it?
Yeah.
It would. So you would think that their presence or the evil upon which they were.
Were the first people that lived here murdered?
They were not. Don't worry.
Okay, good.
I know. So but you would think that would definitely shade your opinion of this house.
It would.
So do you think that maybe if you knew that coming in, that maybe certain things that would be coincidental, like creaking of an old house, you'd think, oh my gosh, it must be the ghosts of the people that were murdered here.
Yeah.
So you'd think that knowing that story ahead of time would definitely cloud your judgment upon this house. So maybe in the same way, the people that moved into the Amityville Horror House knew about the Lutz family. Maybe they knew about the murders, and
they did.
And
remember
that
they said that.
Yes, and maybe they were. Maybe that clouded their judgment of the house and made it, made things that normally old houses built in, the olden days in Long Island maybe have just naturally bad noises or drafts or flies just spontaneously appear in rooms. I don't know.
If a family had been murdered here before I came, then I would be scared whenever, like, sometimes, the fridge just decides to go, like,
Yep.
I would be scared when it did that, because I think, oh my gosh, the ghosts are getting water.
Yes, when in reality, the refrigerator is just refilling the ice machine. So again, that makes a lot of sense. All in all, what did you feel about the Amityville Horror? Is it a film that you enjoyed, or is it one that you could have done without seeing?
Could have done without seeing.
Okay.
It was cool, but
it was cool. It was nice to see, but you're ready to move on. Yeah. What would you rank it out of 0 to 10?
7.
A 7. So a film that you really didn't want to see, you rate a 7. Man, you must really love horror.
6.
6? Okay. 6. If I keep talking, I feel I'm going to drive this rating way down. So then the question remains, we always ask after we watch a film, is, Sierra, do you think I'm a bad dad for letting you watch this movie?
No, I really don't think there's anything that would stop. I mean, there's not really anything bad in it, though, unless you're, like, sensitive to blood.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you're watching horror films, then there probably isn't going to be a lot to be sensitive to you. I mean, just fair warning for parents out there that are listening. There is some violence. There is familial violence where, they talk about the story of the young man who was a late teenager who murdered his family. So there's a lot of violence. There's a lot of things. So there's definitely that part involved in it.
That lasts like 5 seconds, though, and then it moves on. And there's really nothing bad about it other than if you don't like blood, then you might not want to watch this movie.
Sure.
But, again, that scene also only lasts 5 seconds. So I don't see why anything would be bad with it.
Okay, fair enough.
The house looks just like the one next to it. And the one next to that. And the one next to that. A young couple live in it.
Give Ken a kiss.
You are so obnoxious.
With their 3 children. And something more.
moving into our second film this week, keeping on a theme as you are more than likely have already figured out, it's Poltergeist. It's a 1982 film directed by Tobe Hooper, but more widely considered to be Steven Spielberg's first foray into horror. He wrote and produced the film, and it is the film of a family who moves into a house, a new house. It was new build, and the father figure actually worked for the company that built the houses, so that's part of it. And from the moment they move in, they start having odd things happen in this house. And, since the house is brand new, there's been no murders. There's nothing like the Amityville Horror, where there's, murders and past evil that maybe have seeped into the walls. But yet, things are not quite right. And we come to find out the house has a poltergeist. Sierra, what do you think of this film?
I think it was really good. But it's not just because the house had a poltergeist. It was also built on top of a cemetery.
Right. No, it was. You're right. It was built on an old Indian burial ground.
And you figure out later on that
spoiler alert.
They thought that they had moved it, but they had only just moved the tombstones. They didn't
Famous
move the
line from the movie. They didn't move the bodies. They just moved the headstones. Yeah. So basically, they built this entire community over an ancient Indian burial ground. Left the bodies. The bodies are obviously pissed, and they take their revenge out on the people that are now living above them. And there's some classic scenes in this film. The scene of the mom who's in the swimming pool that's being constructed, gets down in the water and the skeletons start popping out, and that's a very spooky scene for sure. There's also the sequence of the clown attack in the room. That creepy clown is just, again, I saw this movie way too young. When it came out, I was only 8 years old. I probably saw it before I was 10, and that clown creeped me out. That clown was in my nightmares for many years. Did you get any nightmares after watching it? Do you have any fear of clowns now?
No. Well, I always had a fear of clowns.
Sure.
I've never liked clowns.
So we shouldn't watch it then?
No, I want to watch it.
You want to watch it?
I like being scared.
Oh, you like being scared? Well, clowns, that'll definitely be a movie that'll scare you. Clowns
I hate clowns. I have a fear of clowns.
Yeah.
Well. But, the clown in this one was definitely scary, definitely. But not too bad.
Not too bad? Okay. Well, again, one of the interesting side facts of this film, there's many side facts of this film because it is one of the iconic horror films of the 80s. Again, it was created by Steven Spielberg, who's gone on to be known. He did E.T., he did a lot of family-friendly films. The film was initially rated R by the Motion Picture Association of America, and Tobe Hooper and Steven Spielberg appealed the MPA on the rating, and they won their appeal. One of the famous films won the appeal, and the film is now rated PG. I would argue this film is probably should have been rated R or PG-13. Now, of course, at the time they didn't have PG-13. This is one of those films of which they realized, yes, we need something between a PG and an R, because this film is certainly not PG material. Maybe it's not hard R material, but it's definitely somewhere in the middle. Did you think this film was okay being a PG movie?
I think they should come out with a PG-9 material.
PG-9?
This is where I would put that.
Okay.
Because it's not it's not for 5-year-olds, but it's not scary for older kids. So
okay.
I don't think it's PG-13. I think it's PG-9, which does not exist. But if it did,
well, interestingly, you say that. We watched the movie with the whole family. So, and your brother is just turned 9, so he would fit in this PG-9 rating. Although I will say that he kind of got spooked out of the whole family. He probably got spooked out the most by this film. Because it's definitely a scary film. Don't get me wrong. It is pretty scary, and he definitely took some scares to it. So maybe PG-13 is the right one for this. Do you what do you think in terms of the film itself?
I think it was good. I really liked how the TV people were I really liked
You like the TV people, like that idea
of
people
the hand, of people being only where.
Trapped.
Yeah, this kind of I don't know if this really started it, but I don't know. But I think this started the thing about only the little kids being able to see something in the TV, like the TV.
Okay.
I don't know. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, there's certainly different. There's certainly there are things that in horror and other films where young children or young people are more sensitive to seeing things that adults can't see, because of the fact that we become jaded, or we just don't see things as clearly or as creatively as young people. And I think there's part of that, because I definitely Caroline is used by the people that are trapped between the worlds, because they are being, in a sense, they're basically not at rest because their tombs, their graves have been disturbed, and they don't want to go on into the light, as it were, to move beyond our current dimension to this one. Now, it makes an interesting thought, though, for you. Now, this is separate from ghosts, because they don't really manifest themselves as ghosts in this film. They're kind of not seen for the most part. There are some instances where there is some where they do appear in a physical type of format, but usually they're not. So do you think, we talk about, do you believe in ghosts? Do you believe that there's different planes of cognition, as it were? Like, we live and we're on one plane, then we die, we move on to a second plane or a different place, what have you, and that maybe there's like an in-between world where people or souls or whatever you want to call that could get trapped, like Poltergeist.
Yeah, I definitely think there's a life after life.
Okay.
Like an afterlife.
Sure.
But I don't know if you just kind of teleport there, or if there's like something you have to do to get there, like an in-between.
So you think there might be an in-between plane or place where you have to either earn your way into the next world or make up for your misdeeds and evil that you've done in the first world. Yeah, that's an interesting idea. Do you think? And again, we haven't seen the sequels. There are sequels to this film. Again, I always feel the sequels tend to do, for the most part, are worse than the original film. But it's an interesting film. It kind of had an ending that was very similar to another film that we watched. And what film was that, Sierra?
Which one was it?
What happened at the end of Poltergeist? What happened to the house at the end of Poltergeist?
Oh, it like crumbled to the ground, kind of like Carrie.
Yes, kind of like Carrie, kind of just disappeared. Which, Carrie, again, was another film that was rooted upon evil, and perhaps evil within that particular spot. I should also mention this film was actually directed by another director that you've seen before, Tobe Hooper. Do you remember which film he directed?
The Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yes, Texas Chainsaw Massacre. You're right.
Which I also like that one.
Which you also like that one. So, you're starting to see that certain directors, do well in horror and tend to stay within that realm of horror. Tobe Hooper is a prime example. There's obviously a lot more examples as we move on. But this is the first chance where you've had an opportunity to see, well, I guess Alfred Hitchcock also, he did a couple movies. You've seen Birds and Psycho, which are both horror films. But this is, kind of the first one that's kind of two separate films in horror. You kind of see how they're, that people are gravitating towards these masters of horror, these people that are definitely like to make these types of movies. So, a question, did you like Poltergeist or Texas Chainsaw Massacre more?
Texas Chainsaw Massacre, probably.
Okay, fair enough. What did you think about Poltergeist? Do you think that's a film that you would show your kids if you were in my place?
Sure.
Sure? When you have kids someday?
I mean, if they wanted to watch it.
Sure. You wouldn't sit them down and force like you were going to watch this horror movie.
No, yeah, if they wanted to watch it, I would let them.
Okay. Do you think, we asked the question, like we come to the end of it, is there anything else that you'd like to add about Poltergeist before we move on?
Yeah, I'd like to add something about why I thought that Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Sure.
I kind of liked how they had like a final girl on that one.
Okay.
And I also kind of liked how everywhere she went for help, suddenly that there was another person there that was trying to not help her.
She was definitely every way she turned into more and more evil people. Which is interesting because you brought up the idea of a final girl. And to be honest, this is the one thing, even though it is, the film is rated PG, it was initially rated R. Pop quiz, how many people died in Poltergeist?
0?
Correct. Good answer. Ding, 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 ding. Now, see if we were a better podcast with higher budgets, we would have like a little sound effect. We go ding, but we don't have that, so we have to make our own. Yes, yeah, absolutely. No one died during the filming. I don't know about the sets, but in the film itself, no one died in Poltergeist. So it's all about people who have died previously, and while there's lots of terror and lots of scaries that go through the original Poltergeist, not a single person died in Poltergeist. So I mean, it's a film with no body count, but lots of scares. And if you're ranking that between 0 and 10, 1 to 10, how would you rank Poltergeist?
I would rank that one 8.
An 8? Not bad. You like your horror films. Poltergeist is great. It's a classic. I'm glad we were able to watch it as a family, for sure. Well, that pretty much wraps up this week's episode of the Bad Dad Horror Podcast. I know it's not as long as normal, but we're getting back in the saddle of things, as it were. And we got great things on the horizon. We've got that Extra Lost special Halloween episode that'll eventually come out at some point. And who knows, we may finally have gotten into the Jason Voorhees section of horror. But that's time for another day. Until then, we'll be back.
There are certain rules that one must abide by in order to successfully survive a horror movie. Never, ever, ever, under any circumstances, say, I'll be right back. Because you won't be back.
I'm getting another beer. You want one?
Yeah, sure.
I'll be right back.